Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today, I was thinking about when I was a kid, especially with all these stories that we've been talking about. And I remember there were certain moments in my life where I wasn't extremely happy with being Korean. I nowadays, especially with kimchi and gochujang making the rise that they are, a lot of people kind of comment, especially I guess in Portland too, and mainly white people, they comment, oh, it must have been so nice to have like grown up speaking your language, grown up with another culture, like it must have been really nice. And it is, like, a lot of it is very reassuring. It's nice to have that now ingrained in me, such as Korean, and for you it's Tagalog and a little bit of Pangasinan. But for me, growing up, I didn't always feel that. And actually, for most of my growing up, I absolutely didn't feel that.
Was there a specific time that you felt that way?
It was a lot of my earlier childhood. And, you know, talking about Malaka Gharib's book and kind of how the people that surrounded me weren't always necessarily white. And still I had this strong identity crisis of wanting to be American. So I forget how long, but it at least had to be like 3 to 5 years where I didn't want to eat kimchi. And I don't know if it was the taste of it or if it was just the fact that I was so adamant not to be Korean. I remember my brother was really into 90s K-pop, and I still remember the amount of CDs that he had. Like, it was a desk drawer full of like different K-pop CDs that we would get when we went to Korea.
Totally.
And I listened to none of them. Like, I refused to want to listen to that music. Every time we would go back to Korea, I kind of felt like an outcast with my own family because I didn't know the same references that they did because I denied that part of my culture for so long. So one of the questions I had for you was there ever a moment when you were growing up that you wished that you could trade in who you are as a Filipinx, for being just an American?
So I can't think of a time where I wanted to trade in being Filipinx to be a white US American, but I do recall times where I wish that I was less Filipinx and more specifically Japanese. Because in my heritage on my mom's side, her great grandmother was Japanese. And so I grew up wishing I was more Japanese because I enjoyed manga, I enjoyed anime, I enjoyed ramen and sushi. Those were the aspects that I gravitated towards. And I noticed how rich Japan's country is. Rich in terms of economy, rich in terms of aesthetics. A lot of people go to Japan because it's so beautiful, so orderly. And when I think about Philippines and like coming from the eyes of a child, I saw how destitute Philippines is, how broken apart the islands, the archipelago is, and there's so much corruption that it's hard to get out of that economic cycle of poverty, that cycle of the rich versus the poor. And so growing up, I definitely had moments where I wished I was more of a different ethnicity than Filipinx, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just kind of the feel of what it's like to be any kid. But I remember for me, it was seeing the freedoms that was allowed for people of white culture, like the white friends that I did have. And I was like, man, like, that's so freeing. Like, you have so much less to worry about and deal with rather than what we're going through. So it was really just this thing on my mind, especially as we were reading Annie Choi's book, that I really started to think back a little bit about my own childhood and be like, man, I did reject it a lot. And now, like, I wouldn't change my Koreanness or my identity as a Korean for anything in the world. And now I really strongly vibe with it. I really want to be more a part of it, and I feel almost a sense of guilt that I can't carry more of it. Like, one of the things I really want to learn is the history of Korea. Like, our last names. Like, there's a reason why if you went to my high school and you went to our graduation, we had this thing of, okay, like, you know, it's in alphabetical order by last name, right? So you have, one of my friends' name was Abicity, and I was like starting with the A's, and then you had like, I don't know why I'm only thinking of Filipino ones, Bartholomew and like Castro and like, anyways, our school wasn't full of Filipino people, but eventually you get to like the K's and it's Kim's, and that was like a solid 5-minute long reading of Kim. It was like Kim Annie, Kim Amy, Kim Bethany. Yeah, it just keeps going on and on. And it's like, okay, like we got through the Kims, and I remember at our graduation there was even laughter because parents, I mean, it's funny, like it's such a unexpected point. So we got through the K's and the Kims, but right after K, a couple letters down, there's the L's, which you then find the Lees. And so for me, I was, you know, it was always just something that's like, oh, you have this last name. And for Chinese and Korean, like Lees they span both cultures. But I know with Koreans, our last names are identities to our ancestors in certain ways. Like there are 3 major families that it all trickles down from. But it is something that I just want to know more about. Like I want to know, how does this form? Like how did this form? Like where does this come from? And so this is going to be something that stems into the next book that we're reading. Very excited for it. It is my pick. And for people that weren't coming into our Asian book club expecting to read only Korean books, I promise this isn't the only thing we're doing. It just happens to be this way.
Yes.
I promise we're gonna span into all
Asian countries.
Yes. But our next book is gonna be one that is surrounding and also descriptive of some form of Korean history.
Yes.
But before we talk about that, let's talk about our recommendation for the week.
For our recommendation of the week, I am recommending Courtney On Design. Courtney On, AHN, is an independent designer, illustrator, and children's book author. Their work is focused on a social justice lens and autism advocacy, which I appreciate. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, I've recently been exploring autistic diagnoses and trying to figure out what parts of my obsessive-compulsive ways are part or stem from autism, and what parts of my mental health do not. With Courtney, they clearly delineate, for example, food textures and why needing a specific kind of food would be comforting for a person with autism. Another example is why someone with autism would focus on a certain design aesthetic to feel more grounded, like squiggly lines or circles and so on and so forth. You can find all of Courtney On's work on Instagram at Courtney On Design, Courtney COURTNEY on AHN Design. And you can also see their home decor on their Instagram at candy.corn, COURN. You can also see more of their work, their services, and their children's books at CourtneyOnDesign.com.
Yep, and that's our recommendation for the week. Okay, so before we tell you what our next book is going to be, let's recap the hints. So hint number 1 was it was a National Book Award finalist and New York Times Book Review Top 10 of the year. Hint number 2, the title refers to a mechanical game originating in Japan used for gambling. And hint number 3, this has recently been adapted into a limited series on Apple TV. Yes. So, wondering if you got it. If you got it, that's good.
Yeah.
If you didn't, our next book in Asian Book Club is...
That's a drum roll.
Pachinko!
Yeah, by...
That's Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. So, this is a book that I've been hoping to read for a while. There's a lot around it that I'm pretty excited for. But let's see what the back cover has to say about it.
So, on the cover, the description for Pachinko says, profoundly moving and gracefully told, Pachinko follows one Korean family through the generations, beginning in early 1900s Korea with Sunja, the prized daughter of a poor yet proud family whose unplanned pregnancy threatens to shame them. Betrayed by her wealthy lover, Sunja finds unexpected salvation when a young, tubercular minister offers to marry her and bring her to Japan to start a new life. So begins a sweeping saga of exceptional people in exile from a homeland they never knew and caught in the indifferent arc of history. In Japan, Sunja's family members endure harsh discrimination, catastrophes, and poverty. Yet, they also encounter great joy as they pursue their passions and rise to meet the challenges this new home presents. Through desperate struggles and hard-won triumphs, they are bound together by deep roots as their family faces enduring questions of faith, family, and identity.
All right, and a little bit more about Min Jin Lee. She's a trailblazer for Asian and Asian American authors in the U.S. She has written this book, Pachinko, and she has also written Free Food for Millionaires. Like I said in the hint, this is a National Book Award finalist. It's also the runner-up for the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. It's the recipient of 2022 Manhe Grand Prize and fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study for Harvard. Mm-hmm. She's a distinguished author. She's a writer in residence at Amherst College, a trustee of PEN America, a director for the Authors Guild, and you can follow her at her Instagram, which is at Lee_Min Jin, which is LEE_MINJIN. And you can also find her on her website at minjinlee.com, which is MINJINLEE.com. Mm-hmm. What are your predictions for this book?
I didn't realize how thick this book was until I checked it out.
She is thick.
Very thick. And then not until I started flipping through to figure out what we're going to read or how many sections we're going to read did I also realize that there are 3 different books in this one book. So it's divided into 3 parts. Mm-hmm. And so knowing that it's divided into generations, I'm predicting that we're going to see a lot of history, not only for the family, but history of both Korea and Japan, and maybe how they, like as governments, how they affect each other. Mm-hmm. I also predict that there's going to be a lot of heartache, mm-hmm. and it's probably going to be more of a downer.
That's what I'm expecting. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think there is probably going to be a lot of seriousness to this book.
Absolutely.
I don't know if this is going to be lighthearted, which is why I was really happy that you chose Happy Birthday or whatever last time. Yeah. It really kind of gave us a little break in the serious reads.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so many people have been recommending this book to me. Mm-hmm. And knowing also the strong history between Korean and Japanese people and their cultures, I mean, there's colonialism involved, mm-hmm. right? Like imperialism, like mm-hmm. in the truest sense, like as Koreans, we have felt attacked at one point mm-hmm. by the Japanese people. You know, that has no reflection of how I feel towards Japanese. I love Japanese culture and a lot of those things, mm-hmm. but I do know that within still more culturally, I don't want to say conservative, but the people that still stick with their old thoughts.
Definitely. Those who are most affected by what has happened.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's still not completely resolved.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm curious what this book has. I think the 3 parts, I wonder if it's going to separate into like the childhood, the middle age, and then kind of the adult piece of it. But yeah, I'm really curious.
Definitely.
The other part is, along with the book recommendation, mm-hmm. people also have given me the TV show recommendation. So I'm excited to not only read this book, but just like Little Fires Everywhere, mm-hmm. we are going to do a special episode watch along.
Yes, and what's additionally exciting for me. Not only are we reading such a highly acclaimed book and knowing that the show comes with recommendations, this is one of the only books so far that I haven't read yet at all. So I'm just like Steven, I'm experiencing all of this for the first time.
Also, Miss Min Jin Lee, if this read goes well, I have Google searched that this is also written in Korean or translated into Korean. So I'm hoping that we have a really fun read. And my mom is now retired, so I'm hoping to give this book also to her. And then so that we can kind of share the stories of what's kind of happened. And I don't know, I think that'll be fun to kind of connect with her through something that I feel like I lack, which is a knowledge of Korean history.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so I hope that y'all will come and join us on this read. I think it'll be, I don't know if fun's the word.
I think it'll be enlightening.
Yes.
So let's talk about how we're going to get through this book together. Like we said, she's thick with 2 C's, maybe 3. And so because of that, we're going to break it down into 5 parts. This first reading this week, we're going to read chapters 1 through 11, which is part of book number 1, Gohyang/Hometown, which will be from pages 1 to 96 in the hardcover.
Yeah, and so we're going to read through this together. Luckily for you, if you need to take breaks, if you're a little bit behind on your reading, you can always join us on a different date and time. You know,
Absolutely.
Our podcast is going to be out there.
Absolutely.
For us, we're going to chug along.
Yeah.
We're going to get this done. I can't remember the last time I've read a plus 400-page book, to be honest. I don't know if I'm ready. This feels like being on that tram with Annie Choi all over again. I see things falling. I'm going to stand somewhere where I feel safe. But
totally.
If you feel like you have any questions, if you have fun comments, if you have anything you want to share, or you just want to be a part of a community of people that are also reading and going through this experience together, how can people get in contact with us?
You can find us on Instagram at Asian Book Club Pod, P-O-D, or if you want to send us a message in particular, you can write to us through our email at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D, @gmail.com.
Right, and we also have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, because that helps us out.
Yeah.
But get to reading. We got a lot to do. We'll check you out next time.
Bye.